world. Moreover, the account reveals very little that seems mythical or that obviously derives from flights of religious fancy.
Microphone.
Rather, the whole thing has about it an
look like
atmosphere of hard-headed, practical planning that adds a chilling note of veracity. For example, the admonition that deformed, impotent, lunatic, and leprous people should be kept out of the Vara sounds a lot like eugenics, a distasteful policy to be sure, but one that might be implemented if the survival of the human race was at stake and there was limited space available for refuge. For the same reasons, it's not surprising that only the seeds of the greatest, best, and finest kinds of trees, fruits, and vegetables, those that are fullest of food and sweetest of odor, are to be brought to the Vara. Why waste space on anything but the best? Also, although it is certain that a number of carefully selected people were to be admitted to the Vara, perhaps as caretakers and managers of the project and as future breeding stock, the emphasis throughout is on seeds, which in the case of human beings would be sperm from the males and eggs from the females. So when we read that the Vara is to be constructed in 3 subterranean levels, each smaller than the one above, each with its own system of crisscrossing streets, it is legitimate to wonder whether some kind of storage system, perhaps with ranks of shelves arranged in crisscrossing aisles, might not really be what is meant here. In the largest part of the place, thou shalt make 9 streets, 6 in the middle part, 3 in the smallest. To the streets of the largest part, thou shalt bring 1,000 seeds of men and women. To the streets of the middle part, 600. To the streets of the smallest part, 300. If it seems fanciful to imagine that we might, in an almost high-tech sense, be looking at the specifications of a seed bank here, then how are we to assess other technological aspects of the Vara, for example, its lighting system? As well as making a door to the place and sealing it up with the golden ring already given to him by Ahura Mazda, Yima is also to fashion a window, self-shining within. When Yima asks for clarification as to the nature of this self-shining window, Ahura Mazda tells him cryptically, there are uncreated lights and created lights. The former are the stars, the moon and the sun, which will not be seen from within the confines of the Vara during the long winter, but the latter are artificial lights, which shine from below. Yima did as he was instructed, and completed the Vara, which thereafter glowed with its own light. That accomplished, he then made waters flow in a bed a mile long. There he settled birds by the evergreen banks that bear never-failing food. There he established dwelling places consisting of a house with a balcony, a courtyard, and a gallery. There too, we're reminded, in accord with the commands of the god, he brought the seeds of men and women. There he brought the seeds of every kind of tree and every kind of fruit. All those seeds he brought, 2 of every kind, to be kept inexhaustible there, so long as those men shall stay in the Vara. Finally, we learn that every 40th year, to every couple, 2 are born, a male and a female, and thus it is for every sort of cattle. And the men in the Vara, which Yima made, live the happiest life. Interestingly, the translator explains in a footnote drawn from various ancient learned commentaries on the text, that the human inhabitants of the Vara live there for 150 years. Some say they never die. Moreover, and particularly intriguing, the births of offspring to every couple do not result from sexual union, but from the seeds deposited in the Vara. Other hints of a mysterious lost technology connected to Yima include a miraculous cup in which he could see everything that was happening anywhere in the world, and a jeweled glass throne, sometimes described as a glass chariot, that was capable of flight. Flood and rain, as well as a climate catastrophe in the form of an overnight reversion to peak Ice Age cold, we also know that the Younger Dryas involved extensive global flooding as a large fraction of the North American ice cap melted and poured into the world ocean. It is therefore noteworthy that the Zoroastrian texts speak not only of the vehement destroying frost of a global winter, but also of an associated flood accompanied by heavy precipitation in which Every single drop of rain became as big as a bowl, and the water stood the height of a man over the whole of this earth. On the other side of the world, and much closer to the North American epicenter of the cataclysm, the Popol Vuh, an original document of the ancient Quiche Maya of Guatemala, based on pre-conquest sources, also speaks of a flood, and associates it with much hail, black rain and mist, and indescribable cold. It says, in a remarkable echo of the Zoroastrian tradition, that this was a period when it was cloudy and twilight all over the world. The faces of the sun and the moon were covered. Other Maya sources confirm that these strange and terrible phenomena were experienced by mankind in the time of the ancients. The earth darkened. It happened that the sun was still bright and clear. Then at midday it got dark. Sunlight was not seen again until the 26th year after the flood. Returning to the Middle East, the famous account of the Hebrew patriarch Noah and the great ark in which he rides out the flood demands attention. It's obvious that there are many parallels with the story of Yima and his Vara. The Vara, after all, is a means of surviving a terrible and devastating winter, which will destroy every living creature by enchaining the earth in a freezing trap of ice and snow. The ark, likewise, is a means of surviving a terrible and devastating flood, which will destroy every living creature by drowning the world in water. In both cases, a deity, Ahura Mazda in the case of the Zoroastrian tradition, the god Yahweh in the case of the Hebrew tradition, intervenes to give advance warning to a good and pure man to prepare for the coming cataclysm. In each case, the essence of the project is to preserve the seeds, or the breeding pairs, of all life. And of every living thing, of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind, 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. Easily missed, but noteworthy, is the fact that Noah's ark, like Yima's Vara, is to have a window, is to be closed with a door, and is to consist of 3 levels. A window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. Last but not least, there are hints of a lost lighting technology in Noah's Ark that parallel the references to the artificial lights in the Vara. In the Legends of the Jews, Louis Ginsberg's remarkable and comprehensive compilation of ancient stories and traditions connected to the Hebrew Bible, we read that the whole journey of the Ark during the year of the flood was conducted in darkness, both by day and by night. All the time it lasted, the sun and the moon shed no light. However, just like the self-shining window of the Vara, the ark was illuminated by a precious stone, the light of which was more brilliant by night than by day, so enabling Noah to distinguish between day and night. Underground cities. Noah's Ark, as is well known, is said to have ended its journey on the slopes of Mount Ararat, the symbolic heartland of ancient Armenia, but now, as a result of wars in the early 20th century, located within the modern state of Turkey. Turkey, in turn, shares a border with Iran, ancient Persia, from which the accounts of Yima's Vara come down to us. It is therefore intriguing that Turkey's Cappadocia region has a very large number of ancient underground structures, hewn out of solid rock and usually, like the Vara, consisting of multiple levels stacked one above the other. These underground cities, as they're known, include the eerie and spectacular site of Derinkuyu, which I was able to visit in 2013. Lying beneath a modern town of the same name, 8 of its levels are presently open to the public, although further levels remain closed off below, and astonishingly, a subterranean tunnel, several kilometers in length, connects it to another similar hypogeum at Kaimakli. Entering Derinkuyu was like crossing some invisible barrier into an unexpected netherworld. One minute I was standing in bright sunshine. The next, after I had ducked into the cool, dank, dimly lit system of tunnels and galleries. No self-shining windows now, only low wattage electric light. I felt I had been transported to a realm carved out by mythical walls at the dawn of time. In places, the tunnels are low and narrow, so that one must stoop and walk in single file between walls, stained and blackened with ancient smoke, and overgrown here and there with green mold. At regular intervals, slid back into deep recesses, I passed hulking megalithic doors, shaped like millstones, 5 to 6 feet, 1.5 to 1.8 meters in diameter, and weighing close to half a ton. These were clearly designed to be rolled out to block access. Stairways and steep ramps led down from level to level, and although all the levels were interconnected, the rolling stone doors could be used to isolate them from one another when needed. I noticed a remarkable system of plunging, shear-sided ventilation shafts connecting the deepest levels with the surface, and doing so to such good effect that the gusts of fresh air were still palpable 80 meters, 260 feet or more beneath the ground. In some places, the passageway I was following would debouch into a junction where tunnels branched off in several directions and more stairways led down to even lower levels. And here and there, now to one side of the passageway, now to the other, sometimes accessed by means of holes cut in the wall, sometimes through full-sized doorways, lay small, low-ceilinged grottos in which even a few people sitting together would have felt cramped. But sometimes those doors would lead into interconnected networks of chambers and passages, and sometimes they would open out suddenly into lofty halls and spacious rooms with barrel vault ceilings looming high overhead, supported on monolithic columns hewn from the living rock. The whole place, in short, is a complex and cunning labyrinth on an immense scale, a work of astonishing architectural complexity that would be impressive if it had been built above ground, but that is utterly breathtaking when one considers that it all had to be mined, chiseled, hammered, cut, and gouged out of the volcanic bedrock. Later, studying the plan, I realized that this vast hypogeum, looking in cross-section like a gigantic rabbit warren and extending over an area of more than 4 square kilometers, lay underfoot wherever one went in the modern town of Derinkuyu. Streets beneath streets, rooms beneath rooms, a secret and typical city of unknown antiquity and of unknown purpose, but certainly the product of immense ingenuity, determination, and skill. And Derinkuyu is just one of 200 such subterranean complexes, each containing a minimum of 2 levels, with around 40 containing 3 levels or more, that have been identified in Turkey in the area between Kayseri and Nevşehir. Moreover, new discoveries are constantly being made. Derinkuyu itself was found in 1963 after builders renovating the cellar of a modern home broke through to an ancient passageway below. And most recently, in 2014, workers preparing the ground for a new housing project at Nevşehir, an hour's drive north of Derinkuyu, stumbled upon yet another unsuspected hypogeum. Archaeologists were called in, and it was quickly realized that this one was bigger than any of the others so far known. As Hasan Unver, mayor of Nevşehir, put it, Derinkuyu and Kaymakli are little more than kitchens when compared to the newly explored site. It is not a known underground city, added Mehmet Ergun Turan, head of Turkey's Housing Development Administration. Tunnel passages of 7 kilometers are being discussed. Naturally, when the discovery was made, we stopped the construction we were planning to do in the area. Several commentators immediately speculated that the newly discovered site might be 5,000 years old, but there is no basis for this, or really for any date. All we can say for sure is that the earliest surviving historical mention of Turkey's underground cities is found in the Anabaptists of the Greek historian Xenophon, written in the 4th century BC. So they are older than that. But the question is, how much older? As the reader will recall from chapter 1, there's no objective way to date structures made entirely of rock. What archaeologists look for, therefore, are organic materials that can be carbon dated. To be useful, however, These organic materials must be excavated from locations under a megalith that has never been moved, for example, or in the original mortar in a joint between two stone blocks that allow reasonable deductions to be made about the date the associated structural elements were put in place. This is why the mysterious decision by the builders of Göbekli Tepe to bury the megalithic enclosures there has been so helpful to archaeology. Once buried, they stayed buried, and organic materials in the fill can thus be used to make valuable inferences about their age. In many other sites, by contrast, there is the possibility that the intrusion of later organic materials will give a falsely young date, and in some, the underground cities of Turkey being a prime example, no reliable dating.
Gather up the kiln and stuff tomorrow, get it ready, get it packed up,
and indeed repurposed many times.
That's why we got generators so we can work on the road.
With organic materials being introduced on every occasion, thus making it impossible to draw any inferences about the epoch.
So we'll be blowing glass out in the middle of nowhere.
The general view of archaeologists is that the underground structures were originally developed in the 7th or 8th centuries BC by an Indo-European people called the Phrygians, who lived in Cappadocia.
I got a couple bubblers done today,
Theory
a
is
couple
that the
pipes.
Phrygians began the project by widening and deepening natural caves and tunnels that already existed in volcanic rock, making use of the spaces they created for storage and possibly as places of refuge from attackers. By Roman times, the Phrygians long gone, the inhabitants of the area were Greek-speaking Christians who further developed and expanded the underground caverns, rededicating some of the rooms as chapels, and leaving inscriptions in some of which survive to this day. In the Byzantine era, from the 8th to the 12th century,
get everything wrapped up into the
Roman
RV.
Empire was
What's up, Sebastian?
with newly Islamicized Arabs, and the underground cities became places of refuge again, a function they continued to serve during the Mongol invasions of the 14th century AD. Later still, Greek Christians used the cities to escape persecution at the hands of Turkish Muslim rulers, and this practice continued into the 20th century, when the structures finally fell into disuse after the truce and population exchange between Greece and Turkey in 1923. With such a checkered history, it's easy to see why the underground cities cannot be dated using objective archaeological techniques.
Good to hear, good to hear.
The vast effort that went into their excavation out of solid rock and their sophisticated ventilation systems speak of powerful, long-term motives, far beyond the limited and temporary need for shelter from attackers. With this in mind, let us consider a scenario in which the Phrygians, favored for no good reason by archaeologists as the first makers of the cities, were themselves just one of the many later cultures to make use of them. It is perfectly possible that this is the case, and if so, then it is also possible that these extraordinary underground structures might date back to a time long before the Phrygians, perhaps even as far back as the fatal winters of the Younger Dryas that set in around 12.
I got a nice stack of glass going on. You can see triple I made yesterday.
Nonetheless,
I got a double over here, a bunch of bubblers and pipes.
Author of Cappadocia,
I like the little Sherlocks.
is of the opinion
Here's a
that
triple we
Derrington
made
does in
yesterday.
fact date back to the Paleolithic. His
Nice.
argument is
It's
based
good.
partly on the notion that it already existed in Phrygian times, partly on stylistic differences between the upper and the lower, younger levels, and partly on the fact that marks of the implements used to cut the rock
Get that
worn
in somebody's
completely
glass
away in the
case.
upper levels, but are still visible in the lower levels. It is necessary for a long period of time to pass for the chisel marks to disappear. This means that there
you
is
hadn't
quite a
seen
time
that, Glenn?
difference between the years of
What's up,
construction of the
Shirky? How you
first
doing?
stories and the last stories. Demir also suggests that the huge quantities of rock excavated to make the
It's all good. I'm gonna leave
which
them
are
up.
nowhere in evidence in the vicinity today,
They ain't going
were
nowhere.
dumped into local streams and carried off.
Yeah, Shane's
One
had a
of
good
these
birthday. We
streams,
went
the
out to eat.
Sonali, at a distance
And,
of 26 kilometers, 16
kicked it.
miles from Derinkuyu, hand
Split
axes,
spot.
rock chips, and other
Passed
Paleolithic artifacts were found. The evidence is suggestive at best. I wouldn't want to.
He's
bet my
a little
life
cocky
or my
now that he's
reputation.
18 though.
Nonetheless,
No.
the scenario that sees Derinkuyu and the other underground cities constructed in the Paleolithic 12,800 years ago at the onset.
That's a big triple, huh?
Has the great merit of no longer leaving us casting about
Thanks
for a
again.
motive commensurate with the huge effort involved.
I personally
The
like
informed
smoking out of
narrative
doubles.
quite explicitly in
They're
the story of
the
Enoch.
perfect filtration,
Stated simply, the
in my
cities
opinion.
are varus, cut down into the depths of the earth as places of refuge from the horrors of the younger trials, which were not limited to the vehement destroying frost, but as we know from the cosmic impacts failures and melt blasts found in sediment samples at nearby Abu Huraira, also included the terrifying threat of bombardment from the skies. Like a snake out of the sky. It is close to certain, if our planet did indeed cross the path of a giant comet 12,800 years ago, as Firestone, Kennett, and West maintain, that the bombardment would not have been limited to the large fragments that came down during the first event. The comet's debris stream would have remained on an Earth-crossing orbit and would very likely have resulted in decades, perhaps even centuries of subsequent bombardments, not on the same scale of intensity as the initial encounter, but nonetheless able to cause catastrophic damage and to spread enough fear and dismay of the mighty serpent lingering in the heavens to justify the construction of secure underground shelters. Indeed, as we will see, it may still cross the debris stream of the giant Euritrias comet, and the large, deadly Earth, black and cold, invisible to our viewers, may still be orbiting that danger. I'm reminded again of the Abuja prophecy that read in chapter 2. The stars, the long white curtain is going to destroy the world when it comes lower down. That's the comet called long-term heavenly harmony star. Is one of their comets coming back? Could it be that it did not spend all its anger and destructive force with the fragments that hit the earth and caused the ruins to soar into it and undissolved 12,800 years ago? Curiously, the ancient Iranian traditions contain prophecy also, for it is said that Yuma will return and will walk again amongst men, when the signs foreshadowing the last of days appear. Of these the worst will be a winter more terrible than any the world has seen before, when it will rain and snow and hail for 3 long years. The fiery descent of more fragments of the comet could bring back to the earth, just as happened 12,800 years ago. And just as happened then, the recurring panic because the snow was disaster, and debris and smoke from the wildfires caused by lightning, and as people had to be rescued from the impact on the land. These are grave incidents, and we will return to them in a few. Of course, we must consider the story of Noah, the hugely tragedy of Noah, carried by the waters of the flood, so we are told, to the slopes of Mount Ararat, just a few days' walk from Göbekli Tepe. The Noah story also contains a prophecy, which is made manifest in the New Testament, 2 Peter 3, verses 3 to 7. By water, the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and earth were reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. Or as the old psalm puts it, God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water, the fire next time. Chapter 8, the Antediluvians. The biblical story of the deluge is too familiar to require extensive repetition here. The essential elements can be summarized as follows. A life-destroying global flood sent by God to punish human wickedness. A man, Noah, selected by God and given advance warning of the coming cataclysm so that he can build a survival ship, the Ark. The preservation in the Ark of the seeds or breeding pairs of all forms of life, with a particular emphasis on human life. Noah and his wife, together with their sons and their wives, and animal life, of fowl after their kind, as we saw in the last chapter, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. The ark rides out the flood until the waters subside. The ark comes to rest on the mountains of Ararat. When the waters have dried up from the earth, God instructs Noah to leave the ark with his family and to bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it. Noah builds an altar in which he sacrifices some of the animals and birds that he has just saved from the flood. The smell of the burnt offerings is pleasing to God. The surviving humans and animals go forth and multiply and fill the earth as they have been commanded. Mount Ararat rises to 5,137 meters, 16,853 feet, and geologists assure us, on the basis of excellent science, that no part of it has ever been covered by oceanic floodwaters since it began to take shape as a mountain near the end of the early Miocene, some 16 million years ago. The presence of anatomically modern humans in the world, as we saw in the last chapter, cannot be traced back further than 200,000 years. The last ancestor of the chimpanzee, a creature that was very far from being in any sense human, takes us back barely 6 million years. So the notion of a boat with humans on board being washed up on Mount Ararat is a chronological impossibility. Nonetheless, it is intriguing that the story of the deluge as given in the Old Testament makes specific and deliberate mention of the mountains of Ararat. The mount does in fact have twin peaks, which in biblical times were understood as being part of the kingdom of Ararat, the historic land of Urartu, conquered by the Assyrian king Shalmaneser in the late 2nd millennium BC. Due to the limited archaeology that has been undertaken in the region, historians confess that the origins of Urartu must remain obscure, but the earliest known settlements and the beginnings of agriculture in the region have been traced back to approximately 10,000 to 9,000 BC. In other words, to the period of Göbekli Tepe. Moreover, this whole area, Mount Ararat and Göbekli Tepe very much included, formed the heartland of historic Armenia, the direct descendant of the biblical kingdom of Ararat, whose inhabitants saw and still today see themselves as the peoples of Ararat. Written in the 5th century AD, Moses Korenatsi's influential History of the Armenians attributed the founding of the nation to the patriarch Haik, who it was said was the great-great-great-grandson of Noah himself, and thus in the close lineage of the flood survivors who emerged from the ark. Indeed, it is because of Haik that even in the 21st century, Armenians still refer to themselves as Hai, and to their land as Hayastan. They see it simply as a tragedy of history that so much of this land, again including Göbekli Tepe and Mount Ararat, is now in the possession of the Republic of Turkey, following the Armenian genocide of 1915
I'll be out there in a little bit.
1923,
I'm just cleaning
in which
up.
more than 1 million ethnic Armenians are believed to have been killed by Turkish forces. Nationalistic feelings still run high in the communities of the Armenian diaspora scattered around the world, and in the tiny zone of historic Armenia that forms the Armenian Republic today. These tensions have not left Göbekli Tepe untouched.
Refrigerator
And
went out.
many Armenians are outraged that Turkey claims this uniquely important site as its own heritage, as though the ancient Armenian collection did not even exist. A few minutes search on the internet using the keyword Portasar, the former Armenian name of Göbekli Tepe, will confirm this. I'll give a single example here. A YouTube video entitled Turkey Presents Armenian Portasar as Turkish Göbekli Tepe. Amongst the comments, fairly typical of the remarks made by many viewers, we read, "This is the way I look at Portasar, Göbekli Tepe. These people deliberately buried a sacred temple. They did this in the anticipation of having it discovered many years in the future. They believed in reincarnation. Those people who built Portasar, Göbekli Tepe, are here among the Armenians. Their spirits have transcended into the Armenian people of today. When you pass on something in your family, you want to make sure that it goes to only that family member and no one else. Portasar and those lands will be returned back to the Armenians in accordance with the laws of nature." In the same vein, though now entirely within the borders of Turkey, Mount Ararat remains a potent symbol of Armenian nationalism. The landscape of Mount Ararat, with the floodwaters receding and Noah's Ark at the summit, dominates the coat of arms of the Republic of Armenia, while the mountain itself, so near and yet so far, looms over the Armenian capital city Yerevan, a haunting and ever-present reminder that the past is never dead. It's not even past. Thus, there are many ways in which the story of Noah and his ark, and of a world made anew after a terrible global cataclysm, is still a living force in the region of Göbekli Tepe, that mysterious sanctuary in the Taurus Mountains, where the great stone circles began to be put in place in 9600 BC, a date that marks the exact end of the long, fatal winter of the Younger Dryas. As Klaus Schmidt asked me rhetorically when I interviewed him at the site, see Chapter 1, how likely is it to be an accident that the monumental phase of Göbekli Tepe starts in 9600 BC, when the climate of the whole world has taken a sudden turn for the better, and there's an explosion in nature and in possibilities? There's something else about that date too. Just as the beginning of the Younger Dryas in 10,800 BC was accompanied by huge global floods and an episode of a rapidly rising sea levels as icy meltwater from the North American ice cap poured suddenly into the Atlantic Ocean, so too a second global flood occurred around 9,600 BC, as the remnant ice caps in North America and Northern Europe collapsed simultaneously amidst worldwide global warming. The late Cesar Emiliani, professor in the Department of Geological Sciences, carried out isotopic analysis of deep sea sediments that produced striking evidence of cataclysmic global flooding between 12,000 and 11,000 years ago. So although the floods at the end of the Ice Age could never have carried Noah and his ark thousands of feet above present sea level to the source of Mount Ararat, they were indeed global in their extent and would have had devastating consequences for humans living at that time. Mountainous regions such as the Ararat Range would have been natural places of refuge, natural places to bring the seeds of all life, and to start again. Therefore, while the Noah story cannot be literally true in every detail, we must consider the possibility that it is true in its essence. In other words, that it does record the construction of an ark, in which seeds of useful plants and breeding pairs of animals were perhaps preserved by people who already knew agriculture and who possessed architectural skills, who survived the flood, who migrated to the lands between Mount Ararat and Göbekli Tepe, and who subsequently disseminated agricultural and architectural knowledge to the indigenous hunter-gatherers of that region. The sudden and indeed completely unprecedented appearance of giant stone circles at Göbekli Tepe, which surely could only have been conceived and implemented by people with extensive prior experience of megalithic architecture, and the simultaneous invention of agriculture in the exact same locale, are in my view highly suggestive of this possibility. Then too there is the haunting sense that Göbekli Tepe itself constitutes a kind of ark, frozen and memorialized in stone, for its iconography is not only all about animals, but also in a number of intriguing reliefs that show women with exposed genitalia and males with erect penises about human fertility. Imagery of the latter sort, including a figure that Carl Lukert, professor of the history of religions at Missouri State University, interprets as a classic Earth Mother, calls to God's command to Moses and his family to be fruitful and multiply.
I got more than half a tank of oxygen left.
Meanwhile, where else but in Noah's Ark can we find a menagerie as eclectic as the one portrayed on the megaliths of Göbekli Tepe? A menagerie, as we saw in Chapter 1, that includes spiders, scorpions, and snakes, every creeping thing of the earth, birds and cattle, fowls after their kind and cattle after their kind, and foxes, felines, goats, sheep, gazelles, boars, bears, etc., etc. In short, as Genesis 6 verse 20 has it, every kind of animal and every kind of creature. A final touch. Noah sacrificed some of the animals and birds that he had just saved from the flood as an offering to God. At Göbekli Tepe,
so we'll be good for a couple of days on the road too, with supplies and shit. I got propane, oxygen. Fucking kiln run on a 15 amp fuse off that generator.
It has long been recognized by scholars that the biblical flood narrative is not original to the Old Testament, but was borrowed from a much earlier source. Indeed, a source dating back to the oldest true civilization so far acknowledged by archaeology, ancient Sumer in Mesopotamia,
If you hear the bells, you're awake.
Millennium BC, flourished during the 4th and 3rd millennia BC, and survived into the 2nd millennium BC. The two earliest surviving written versions of this global flood myth can be seen today at the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology and in the private Schoyen collection in Norway. Both are written in
I got blind spots.
Sumerian language.
I've just been blowing glass for a few hours. It's hard to read chat.
Rather than complete texts. Of the two, however, it is the University of Pennsylvania.
Glenn, I always got to read his shit. You got to pay attention to what that motherfucker says. You never know what's coming out.
Located on the Euphrates, 200 kilometers south of the modern city of Baghdad.
Love you, Glenn.
It is the most complete, consisting of the lower third of what was once a 6-column tablet of baked clay and dated to the 17th century BC. The Schoyen,
before you know it, it'll start talking about food prices and scaring people.
Older, dated to the 19th to the 18th centuries BC. Repeats some of the lines of the Pennsylvania fragment and adds a few new details not found.
But he's right.
What rare and precious things these little broken slabs of baked mud are, and what a tale they have to tell.
Yeah, the cuneiform tablets.
I was instantly intrigued because it contains explicit references to the existence of 5 antediluvian cities, which we are informed were swallowed up by the waters of the flood. The first 37 lines of the University of Pennsylvania tablet are missing, so we do not know how much. But at the point where we enter it, the flood is still far in the future. We hear about the creation of human beings, animals, and plants. Then another break of 37 lines occurs, after which we find that we have jumped forward in time to an epoch of high civilization. We learn
cooling down my kiln.
Before the flood,
so tomorrow I'm going to come in here and pack up most of this stuff and put it back in the
Then
RV.
comes the reference to the foundation
Get ready
of
for the road,
Sumer's antediluvian
going west.
by an unnamed human or a god.
I intend to be back here probably in the next couple of weeks. It shouldn't take us too long to get down the window rock and hit
And the
Tempe
exalted divine lords
fucking
founded the 5 cities in pure places, called their
Phoenix
names,
areas.
apportioned them as cult centers. The first of these cities, Eridu; the second, Bat Tibira; the
I'm
third,
going
Larak;
to want
the
to
fourth,
make this
Sipar;
a home
the
base
fifth,
for little
Shur;
outings like this. I'm thinking Wyoming
the
next
preserver of
after
seed
the
of
southern
mankind.
route. Why not?
When
Before it
we
gets real
rejoin the
cold.
narrative, after the third 37
Go
line
see
of
Daniel.
Kuna, the scene has changed bewilderingly. Although the flood is still in the future, the foundation of the 5 antediluvian is
Well,
not far in the past. It is apparent from
you've
the
been watching
context
with
that
me,
in
my
the
friend.
intervening period, the city's
You've
inhabitants
seen the corner.
have behaved in such a way as to incur divine displeasure, and that a convocation of the gods has been called to punish
I
mankind
got a
with the
rumor for
terrible
you.
instrument of an earth-destroying flood. At the moment
We
when we
might
pick up
be
the
having a
story,
little more than 7
a
years
few of the
family.
gods are dissenting from this decision and expressing their unhappiness or dissatisfaction with it. Without preamble, a man called
Might be more
Zisudra
like 7
is then
months
introduced,
with this
the
kind
Sumerian
of thing
archetype
going on.
of the biblical patriarch Noah. The text describes him as a pious, God-fearing king, and allows us to
survivable.
understand that one of the gods has taken pity on him.
That's the thing that
The name of
scares them.
this god has not survived in the
They don't want a
University
lot
of
of people
Pennsylvania
mad at them
fragment,
in the
but
end.
the Schoyen fragment gives us a clue.
They're going to
when it
give us a few
reveals that
sacrificial
Zisudra was
lambs
not
here
only a
real
king,
soon.
but also a priest of the god Enki. This god,
Not the ones
of
you
whom we'll
want.
hear more later, tells Zisudra, "Take my word, give ear to my instruction. The flood will sweep over the cult centers.
We're gonna
To
have to go
destroy
hunt
the
them
seed
down.
of mankind is the
That's one
decision, the word,
main
of
drive
the
of what I'm
assembly of
doing.
gods." A text break of 40 lines follows, which scholars deduce
I'm
from the
going to
many
the
later ascensions
Guardians
of the same myth
and give them
must have
back their
continued
humanity.
with detailed instructions to Zisudra to build a giant boat and thus save himself from destruction. When the story resumes, the cataclysm has already begun. All the windstorms, exceedingly powerful, attacked as one. At the same time, the flood swept over the cult centers.
Get your
For
rights
7
on,
days
Greg.
and
Listen
7
to your own
nights, the flood
advice, brother.
swept over the land.
I'm fixing to go
And the
pick
huge
up a
boat
bunch of
was tossed
ours
about
and
by
fucking put it in that RV.
on the great waters. Throughout the cataclysm, the skies remain dark.
I've been saving it for
Then on the
years.
8th day,
I got fucking
the sun
food
breaks
coming
through
out
the
my
clouds,
goddamn
and
ears.
the rains and raging storms cease. Opening the window of his survival ship, Zisudra looks out over a world that has changed forever, and sacrifices.
Don't worry,
an
Glenn.
ox
We're
and a
heading around
sheep
your
to the
areas
gods.
sometime soon.
An infuriating lacuna of 39 lines follows, presumably telling us about the place where Zisudra makes landfall and the steps
I
that
got
he
enough
takes
rice and
thereafter.
beans for
When we
everybody.
pick up the story again, near the end
That's
of the
Polly. I
text,
got a
we
ridiculous
find him in
amount
the
of fucking
presence
food,
of the
man.
high gods of
What's
the
up, coffee?
Sumerian pantheon, Anu
Oh, you
and
seen
Enlil,
a bunch of my
who have
food.
repented
Fuck.
of their earlier
I
decision
got
to
all that
wipe
food in
mankind
storage, man.
entirely
Fucking
from the face
bins
of
and
the
bins
earth,
of it.
and are now so grateful to Zisudra for building his ark and surviving the flood.
How's the
that they
coffee
decide to
tonight?
make him
It was
immortal.
good this morning.
Life
I have to make coffee with y'all Sunday morning.
breath,
Got the
eternal
generator running.
they
It's
brought down
noisy.
for him.
I'm noisy.
Zisudra the king, the preserver of the name of vegetation and of the seed of mankind. The final 39 lines.
You can ask Glenn.
are
I'm
missing.
noisy in the morning. If I ain't sleeping, nobody's sleeping.
The Seven Sages. The late Professor Samuel Noah Kramer, one of the great authorities on ancient Sumer, observed
Well,
that
how's the
there
state
are
of the world,
tantalizing
Coffee?
obscurities and uncertainties in this oldest surviving written version of the worldwide
I was
tradition
looking at
of flood.
Iswal.
What there can be no doubt about at all,
It looks like my sky
is that
kind
the
of turned all
tablet speaks of
cheese.
an urban
Tornado.
civilization that existed before the
You
flood
working up north?
and provides us with the
All
names
right.
of its sacred cities:
This
Eridu,
is,
Bad Tiberi,
as I
Darak,
suspected,
Sipar,
it's
Shurapak. These cities
that
were
Hudson
told
Bay
quite
hurricane's all
specifically
you're
were
doing.
swallowed up in the deluge. Moreover, long after Sumer itself had ceased to exist, rich traditions
Every time that thing
concerning the
flares
five
up, you're up
cities,
there.
the
I
antediluvian
don't know what you got against them
and the flood,
Inuits, but
survived in
goddamn, man,
Mesopotamia,
that's
and
a
were
hell of a
repeated
storm.
by the cultures of
That one over
Akkad,
by Iceland's
Assyria,
fucked
and
up
Babylon
looking, dude.
that later
I was
rose
looking
to
at that
prominence
yesterday.
almost after
I
Christ's
just looked at it a little bit ago.
Indeed, it is
Like,
fair
fuck
to
me.
say that
Nobody's
the
talking
traditional
about that
history
shit.
of this region,
Iceland's
as it
fucked.
was told in the is very clearly divided
It's in the eye of the
into
storm.
two
It is the
periods,
eye of the storm. That
before
motherfucker's huge,
and
man.
after the flood, and that both periods were regarded by the peoples of the
Love you
region
too, Daniel.
as absolutely factual and real. We saw in chapter 1 how the
That's some
Mesopotamian
fucking
traditions
weather
not only
you up
preserved
that way,
memories
man.
of
I mean, I ain't never
cities,
seen nothing like that
but
shit.
also of an
kidding me?
antediluvian civilizing hero
That
called
shit over
Oannes,
Iceland is fucking
and the
chilling.
brotherhood of seven sages, the seven Apkallu, who are said to have supported his civilizing mission. As the reader will recall, these sages are often
It just keeps
depicted in
getting
the
more and
surviving
more
art of the region as
defined.
bearded men holding a peculiar kind of bag or bucket, but sometimes they are also shown as therianthropes, part bird.
Yeah, you can't
As I
read
dug deeper,
this wall
going
while you're
back
driving,
and
can
carefully
you?
rereading the accounts of the
Well,
Babylonian
suffice to
priest
say, your
Berosus
human might be
that I first
spiking
touched upon
coffee.
when I was
Remain
researching
calm.
Fingerprints of the Gods, I was reminded that Oannes
It's,
and the Apkallu sages
Fuck, man.
were also sometimes depicted
It's not
in
that
a
hard to
different
remain calm.
therianthropic form. In this case, part fish, part human.
Just takes practice.
Each of them was paired as a counselor to an antediluvian king, and they were renowned for their wisdom in affairs of state and for their skills as architects, builders, and engineers. Berosus compiled his history from the temple archives of Babylon, reputed to have contained public records that
Yeah.
had been preserved.
I'm
for
wondering
over
how good an internet we're
150,000
going to have
years.
out in the middle of
He has
nowhere,
passed on to
too.
us a description of
I
Oannes
intend to go
as
out
a
in the middle of
monster.
nowhere and blow my
Or a
motherfucking
creature.
ass off live with
However,
y'all.
what Berosus
twitching
has to
at
say
some
is
point.
surely more suggestive
I'm
of a
giving
man
the
wearing some sort of
hotspot
fish
test
costume,
yesterday and
in
today,
short,
all day
some sort of
today.
disguise.
Hotspot's been
The
pretty
monster,
good, but
Berosus
it
tells
comes in
us,
and out and in and
had the
out.
whole body of a fish, but underneath and
And yeah,
attached to the head of the fish, there was another head, human, and
Still
joined to the
shaking.
tail of the fish. Feet like those of a
I
man,
just got an
and it had a
announcement
human
of some
voice.
sort.
At the end of the day, this monster, Oannes, went back to the sea and spent the night. It was amphibious,
Oh,
able to live both on land and in the sea. Later, other monsters
Ukrainian
similar
wars
to Oannes appeared.
popping off.
Bearing in mind that the curious containers carried by Oannes and the Apkallu sages are
Why is
also
my phone
depicted on
telling
one
me
of the
this shit?
megalithic pillars of Göbekli Tepe, and as we saw in chapter 1, as far afield as
I
ancient
don't want to
Mexico
turn
as
that
well.
off. That's my hot
What are we
spot.
to make of all this? The
Where
mystery
did that
deepens
news
when we
come
follow
from?
the
There it is.
Mesopotamian traditions further. In summary,
Headlines.
Oannes and the Brotherhood of Apkallu sages are depicted as tutoring
Oh.
mankind for many
We're
thousands of
calling for
years.
nuclear response.
It is
in
during this
Ukraine.
long passage of time that the 5 antediluvian cities arise, the centers of a great civilization,
That's what the news was.
and that kingship is lowered from heaven. Prior to the first appearance of Oannes, Berosus says, the people of Mesopotamia lived in a lawless manner, like the beasts of the field.
Well,
Berosus
Coffee,
wrote
let me
his
catch you up to
history
speed.
sometime between 290
They're hanging
and
Fauci for
278
gain of
BC. But only
fucking-
fragments of it have come down to us,
or
preserved
the-
as quotations and
fucking-
summaries in the works of other writers, such as Syncellus and Eusebius.
Wuhan, the fucking all this
However,
shit.
scholars recognize that what has been transmitted to us
I
in
guess
this
they're
way
probably going
does
to be rolling
accurately
over
reflect
Trump
much more
because
ancient
that's why the
Mesopotamian
Mar-a-Lago was
traditions
raided.
inscribed
And
on
then we got,
cuneiform tablets going back to the very
Biden,
earliest times.
he's been mentioned in
For
this too.
example, the name Oannes, which has perhaps been distorted
But
by
apparently
writers
the
who
focus
passed
is
it
on
to us,
Fauci right at
turns
the
out to
moment.
be derived from Uan Adapa in cuneiform, often
the world's on
abbreviated
fire.
simply to Adapa or to Uana, with
Shaking.
the Adapa element originally being a title meaning
There's a hurricane up there in the Hudson Bay.
wise.
And
It
there's
is said in the ancient
horrible mess
Mesopotamian
over
inscriptions that
Iceland.
Uana accomplishes the plans of heaven and earth. Others of the group of antediluvian sages include U-Anaduga, who is endowed with comprehensive understanding,
Nice.
and Enlilada, described as the conjurer of
Nice.
the city of
It's
Erech.
so good it makes you
This
repeat
last
shit.
point, that the 7 antediluvian sages were conjurers, sorcerers, warlocks, magicians, is driven home repeatedly in the cuneiform texts. But at the same time, associated with their magical abilities are obviously practical, technological, or even scientific skills. Thus, they were masters of the chemical recipes. They were medical doctors. They were carpenters, stone cutters, metal workers, and goldsmiths. And they laid the foundations of cities. Indeed, in later times, all crafts used in royal building and renovation projects were attributed to knowledge that had originated with the antediluvian sages. As Amar Annas of the University of Tartu Estonia
it is the
summarizes in a
apocalypse.
detailed study, the period before the deluge was one of revelation in the Mesopotamian mythology, when the basis of all later knowledge was laid down. The antediluvian sages were culture heroes who brought the arts of civilization to the land. During the time that follows this period, nothing new is invented. The original revelation is only transmitted and unfolded.
I'm kind of out of touch too. I've been avoiding
taught
it.
all the foundations of civilization
My computer's
to
broke.
antediluvian humankind. The cuneiform
I ain't
tablets
got
of ancient
internet. I just got the
Mesopotamia
phone.
also shed at least some light.
I watch it
The Apkallu
this fall.
sages are so often
I
depicted as
discovered the screen
They
thing.
are
I
referred
played
to
with it a
as
little bit. I'm
bamboo
still trying to figure out how to
and are presumed to
fucking
have held holy water.
pause it so I can
Very
go
often,
from
too,
screen to
as the
screen.
reader will recall from chapter 1, the sage holds in his
I
other
haven't figured that out yet. I'm
These are
working on
referred
it.
to in the inscriptions as mulilu, meaning purifiers. In
No, I
some
don't give a
scenes,
fuck either.
the sages frequently appear
Still
in
love you.
conjunction with the
I can't
stylized
spell where the
tree,
fuck either.
or sometimes with the figure of a king, or sometimes
Just
both.
because you can't
No
spell
specific
fucking
textual
spells
references to the tree have survived,
don't mean
but the
you're
general
dumbass.
assumption of scholars is that it must be a sacred tree, while many believe it represents the tree of life, and that it symbolizes both the divine world order and
I
the
stopped
king who
trying to
functioned
spell
as its
a long
earthly
time.
administrator. The conclusion, therefore, is that we are looking at a
I
magical
realize the
technical
English
ritual,
language is
benediction,
not what we're
an
told.
anointing. By sprinkling the
I
tree
was
with
like,
holy
damn,
water,
I wonder if
the
it's in
sages
this version
imparted
because
to
I
it
can
their
never
own
remember
sanctity,
I before E
upheld the
except for
cosmic
after
harmony,
C.
and thus ensured the correct functioning of the plans of heaven and earth. The 7 Apkallus were believed to have been created by Enki. Enki is his Sumerian name, the Akkadians called him Ea. Revealed in the Shoyan tablet as Zisudra's patron, the great god of the subterranean freshwater ocean known as the Abzu. Enki's particular attributes, in addition to his connection to this watery realm.
Look, coffee's coming in twice.
Magic and the arts and crafts.
We get to read this fucking shit.
So it is appropriate that the sages would be amongst his creatures, and that they would frequently be symbolized as fish. The form of the fish arcanum, as one scholar notes, is linked with the secrets that dwell in the deep, and it's never.
There's been a lot of quakes. Every time I look, there's like 7 or 8 fucking 5s.
Thanks to the advice and teachings of these extraordinary sages, these magicians of the wisdom god Enki, we learn from the cuneiform texts that human civilization achieved rapid.
It reaches a new plateau, then it sits there for
and entered a phase of exceptional splendor and plenty.
Fucking
golden age before.
We're moving.
All seem to be for the best.
Orbit again because Orion's up.
But as the millennia passed, mankind fell out of
last
harmony with the universe and with the deities, and with one deity in particular, the great Enlil, described as the king, supreme
he
Lord,
still ain't standing
Father
straight up by the time the sun comes up.
Perhaps giving
funny
more
as
sense
shit.
of his personality.
I understand too. People's heads are under a pillow when Orion rises on his back.
First in the Sumerian pantheon.
It happens
He was
early in the
usually
morning,
a rather remote, impotent figure.
2,
Enlil was his second in command,
3 o'clock.
but in fact responsible for most executive decisions. Enki, nominated in some texts as Enlil's younger brother,
So it looks like we're setting up for a pretty sunset.
The Sumerian flood story, as
don't worry, it just paused, Graham. He'll still be there talking this stupid shit. God. I can't wait until we're on Twitch. I'm running out of shit to play on. Well, there's your east. That's pretty. That's where the show is at sunset. Although it's kind of pretty up here. We got nice skies. I like the texture of the clouds. Looks like this wall. I'm not sure what the fellow campers have planned. See. So we're almost done with this.
Has many gaps, but other tablets, such
still
as those
almost an hour left in it too, so we ain't gonna listen to this. We'll finish it off tomorrow.
Texts, fill in the details and leave us in no doubt of Enlil's wrong.
When we hit the storage shed, I'll definitely find the charger for that fucking thing. And well, I tell you this much: I gotta have the generator running to run that thing because the battery in it's dead. It doesn't charge. It's attached to the fucking cord. That's why we haven't done it. It won't work without it. So I might have to break that down and get a fucking pawn shop laptop or something. We'll see.
Package came for Seamus.
Little wee baby Seamus, thank you, sir. Nice, he'll be happy about that. His mama got a package to him. Cool. Let me take a picture of that and get it to him. Shane's got mail. We've been waiting on that. His mama sent it to him for his birthday. It just got here. How you doing, Oh my God, Shamania. I'm gonna just call you number one. That's my little bag of thanks, Glenn. Charmaine, I'm good. Had a good day. Got a couple bubbles done. Got some pipes done. Um, missed Twitch a lot. Fucking very well. It didn't rain much either, so it was a pretty day. I'm getting ready to go move the homestead. We'll probably go back out close to where we were last night. Anyway, pardon. If I can get some dinner. And tomorrow we're going to come in. I'm going to clean up the shop and get everything in the RV, and we're going to head down towards the storage unit. Give Seamus some time with his friends there before we take off on the road. And we're going to go through the RV. The people that I bought it off of have great big old, like, blow up mattresses and stuff. I don't even know why I was in there. I got to go through some of that shit and make some room for some of that food in there. Yeah, I'm going to put in the lower storage bins. And we'll probably spend a day or two down there, and then we're going to head out on the 50 till we hit the Four Corners. Where you at, Pensacola? They didn't get much damage there either. They said they didn't even get any rain. I got friends in Pensacola. The girl that helped me, the the lady that helped me, well, it was her idea for me to put hemp on the medical bill that I was writing for Davis. So you can blame her for me doing that. It was her idea. I was like, man, they ain't never gonna pass it. She was like, just do it. And I was like, do you know how much? She goes, well, do it. Do your thing. And I did. We made a fucking hemp Bible. And now CBD's legal. So that's Angel's fault. Inverness. I'm not even familiar with where that is. Well, they live in Pensacola. They said they didn't even get any rain up there. So I was thankful for that. They live on that Gulf side. They was doing some funky shit coming in there to through the Gulf. So I was a little concerned. It's good to hear you were spared also. That's always good to hear. I'm still a little bit concerned about Patrick out there. We haven't heard from him. There's just been all kinds of storms all over the place. I haven't heard from Jelly in a couple of days either. Yeah, I'm thankful for you. A lot of damage with that one, for sure. Yeah, I got friends in Florida too. I worry about that state. We got a couple of friends here I haven't seen either. Ashley is from Florida. He's down there in Central Florida, and we haven't seen him in chat. I'm just wondering because they're regulars on Twitch. I I can't Twitch because I broke my computer. So I'm just wondering if, you just wonder if people are okay after something like that happens, So for sure. Oh shit, my Wi-Fi is doing stuff. An hour in. All right, that's cool though. Well, my Wi-Fi is doing stuff. I'm gonna take that as a sign I gotta get going, anyways. Um, like I said, we'll be backing it up tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow. You have a good night. Stay calm and shoot like be spiking.